Hello and welcome to part 42 of Video Series Blender 2.7. In this video we're going to continue on working on our facial rig for a Minecraft character. Now if you have not seen the last video, part 41 of this video series, you can go ahead and check that out. In that video we created the facial features and facial bones for our Minecraft character. In the last video we created eyelids, which you can't see right now, eyebrows, and a character's mouth including teeth and a tongue, as well as all the bones we're going to need to be able to manipulate all of these parts of the face. So in this video we're going to continue on and make shape keys and start with the upper face. The eyebrows and the eyelids will make those work in their entirety in this video. Just a note, if you want to go ahead and download this exact file that I'm starting with in this video, you'll download that in the description below. One more little note here. In the last video I updated the texture map, the texture of the character, because we added new features. We added eyebrows, eyelids, and the inside of the mouth, and I used Blender's built-in painting to update our current texture. I saved the file, I closed Blender, I opened it up again, and Blender did not find that new version of the file because it already had a version of this character texture inside the Blender file, so it did not see the updated version. So that's why I have the node editor up. All I had to do is click this X. This is the texture. I'll make that bigger on the screen right now. And so my UV map was called uv-layout-march1st.png. I clicked the X, I clicked open, and I found my new version of the file, which included the inside of the mouth colors and the eyebrow area and the eyelid area, or at least the new colors for the inside of the mouth. So I've gone ahead and saved that, and I've packed it into the Blender file. So when you download this file, you'll get those in there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is just double check that we have everything that we need. If I press Z to go into wireframe mode, you'll see that behind the surface of my cube I have, and I'm going to go ahead and press Tab to go into edit mode of my mesh. You see that we have two sets of eyelids. They're just blocks hiding behind the surface of the forehead, so they'll slide down when we need them to slide down. We also have eyebrows, and we have the inside of the mouth, including the tongue, and two sets of teeth, as well as the inside of the mouth, the cavity walls. That's all we need. So what I can do now is flip over to my Object Data tab. That's with the character mesh selected. I'll go over to this little triangle tab, the Object Data tab, and as you can see, this is the area where we have our vertex groups, which are assigned to all of the bones in our character. This is not the section we're going to be working on right now. What we need to do now is create shape keys. And what shape keys are, they're basically different versions of the same mesh that we can set up using drivers to be controlled by bones. Let's go ahead and flip back over to Material View, and I'm going to press Tab to go into edit mode. And so what we'll be doing here is we're actually going to be modeling the changes we need for each different thing we want to happen in terms of the character's face. The first thing we have to do though is create a shape key that's going to be the basis of how our character looks, which is how it looks right now. I'm going to press this little plus button, although I have to be back in object mode to do that. So I'll press plus, and as you can see, it names the first shape key basis. We're not going to change that. It's very important that you have a basis that is the way that the character should look from the start without any changed location of any bones. We're going to go ahead and make another shape key. So I'll press the plus button, and the first one we're going to make is the character's eyebrows moved up. So I'm going to double click on the word key 1 there, and I'm going to name this brow.up. So what are we going to do here? Well, I'm going to press Tab now to go into edit mode with brow.up selected in my shape keys area of the Object Data tab, and we're going to change the way that the mesh actually looks. So I'm going to go to my front view, and I'll zoom in on my character mesh in face select mode. I'm going to press A just to select or deselect everything, and I'll press L and L to grab both separate objects for the eyebrows, and I'm going to drag them straight up. Now when a character moves their eyebrows up, they might start to arch a little bit. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to grab each middle section, turn on proportional editing, and kind of make them both a little bit curved. So to do that, I'm going to press A to deselect both. I'll hold Control and Alt on my keyboard, and I'm going to right click on that edge right there to grab the entire edge ring, and I'll hold Control and Alt and Shift and do the same thing on the other side. Now if I drag those up right now, they're just going to drag that one section. So I'm going to turn on proportional editing, which is right down here. It's a little button at the bottom, and we want to turn on connected proportional editing. You can also hit the O key on your keyboard. The O key will turn it on, but again, we want connected only. We don't want to drag any of the faces on the actual head, just the eyebrows. So I'm going to press G and then Z on my keyboard. Now, the circle that I'm scrolling with right now on my mouse is way too big like that. So I'm going to move it. I'll scroll down to make it smaller. And as you can see, I can kind of decide how much of a fall off I want for proportional editing. So I think I'll go to right about there. Now I'm going to turn off proportional editing, and I'm going to select each eyebrow to rotate it out just very slightly. So I'm going to type R and then -5 on that one, just to rotate it out -5 degrees that way. A and L, R, 5, enter to rotate that one out. So now, if I press Tab to go back into object mode, I see the way that my object looks at its basis, but in this shape keys area, we can also turn up the value. Every shape key has a value of 0 to 1, and so if you turn this up, you'll see the full effect of how that shape key looks. And as you can see, it's sort of morphing from the basis when everything else and all the shape keys are turned off. When we turn up the value, we're morphing different shape keys together. Nothing in any other part of the mesh is changing. Shape keys are smart enough that it just sort of knows to manipulate only this section of the mesh, only the vertices that we move to make this version, this brow.up shape key. I'll turn that back down, and we're going to make the next shape key, so I'll press the plus button, and we'll name it. I'm going to call this brow.down. Okay, with brow.down selected, I'm going to press Tab to go into edit mode. We're going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to select both, so I'll press A and then L and then L in face select mode, and I'll drag them both a little bit straight down. I'm going to select just one at a time, L, and then I'm going to type R, and then I'm going to type -5. That's a little bit much. R, -2, and then A, L, R, 2. Okay, so that's his brows down. I could do a little bit of morphing here. I'm not sure if I want to necessarily. Maybe just a little tiny bit. I'll turn on my connected proportional editing, and then I'll just press G and then Z, and maybe just a little bit, so it's not perfectly rectangular anymore. Okay, great. So now if I go back into object mode and turn up the value of brow down, you can see what it looks like. The next ones I want to make are a little bit interesting. You might have noticed at the beginning of the last video, part 41, that when I moved the eye targets and I moved the eyes side to side, the eyebrows also move to kind of make it look like, you know, when you look from side to side, your eyebrows also move a little bit as well. Well, we're going to make two shape keys for that. So I'm going to select my mesh again, and in the Object Edit tab, I'm going to make a new shape key, and I'm going to call this one brows, or just brow dot left, and I'll make that with a capital L. And then we'll press Tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to select both eyebrows, and we'll drag them over. Now the character's left side is this side over here, so I'm going to drag it a little bit that way. And when you look to the left or the right, your eyebrow on this side, or at least a cartoon character's eyebrow, might actually go up a little bit on that side. I'll turn off my proportional editing there, and it might just sort of tilt a little bit, and I'll leave that one alone. So let's take a look. We're about a little bit more than halfway through this block on this side. I have to take a look so I can do the exact same thing on the other side. And this one is just past the halfway mark. Great. I'll press Tab to go back into object mode, and I'll make another shape key, brow.r. Now, I just got to pause here because if my mesh is symmetrical, I could actually duplicate this one, and I could mirror it, but unfortunately my mesh is not symmetrical. If you had made a whole character and you would use the Symmetrize tool or the mirror modifier, and you knew that your mesh was symmetrical, you could turn the value up on, let's say, the left brow, and then you could use this little button. And this little button doesn't look like much, but actually there's a lot in here. You can mirror a shape key, again assuming that your mesh is totally symmetrical. Mine is not. And you could also say create new from mix, so you could turn this value up, and if you say create new from mix, what it would do is it would create a duplicate of this one. It's otherwise impossible without this little button and that option to create a duplicate shape key, but that's the option where you would, and then you turn this back down and go into the new one, and then you could select mirror shape key. We don't have that luxury, unfortunately. I didn't plan that out as well as I should have. Let's go ahead and brow.r. In fact, I'm going to take a look at brow.l. So right about to there, and a little bit past the halfway mark. Okay, so let's go into brow.r. I'll press A and L and select both eyebrows, and I'm going to move this one past the halfway mark a little bit, and then move this one up and rotate it. Now I'm not exactly sure that's quite right, so I'm just going to double check. I'm going to move that one. Okay, and I'm going to try selecting and doing that one. So it looks pretty good to me. This eyebrow goes a little bit above the bottom of where that one is, so I'm going to double check. Okay, this eyebrow is a little bit lower than I would like, so I'm going to go back into edit mode with the brow.r selected, and we'll just move it up just a tad. Okay, looks good to me. So now we have 4 new shape keys, and we're going to control them using bones. In fact, I'll go ahead and get rid of this node editor window. We don't need it anymore, because now we have to open up the graph editor window, which is a window that we haven't used before, but it's also the window where you can set up drivers. So I'm going to split this window in 2. I'll drag this little crosshatched area to the left to make a second window. And I'm going to go down to the change window type button on the header, and we'll select graph editor. Now, by default, the graph editor is a great tool for looking at the curves. In other words, the change of different properties, usually to do with animation. But in this case, we're going to change the window type from F-curve to drivers, and I'm not really sure why exactly they put these two things in the same window. I'm not an expert in using drivers, although I do know how to set up these basic shape keys to be controlled by bones. So I'm going to change this mode to drivers, and I'm going to press the N key to bring up my properties panel. It's actually not the main part of this window that we are going to be using. We're just going to be using the 2 side panels. So I'll make this window a little bit narrower. We don't need to see the middle part, only the 2 side panels. Okay, so what are we doing here? Well, we want to assign a bone to change the value of the shape key. In other words, if I select brow.up and I change the value from 0 all the way up to 1, we want a bone to be able to do that. In fact, we want this bone to do that. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn brow.up all the way back down to 0. And we have to put our mouse over the value here, in other words, over 0.000, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say add driver. You can't click over here on the name of the shape key. That won't work. It has to be on the 0.0. Okay, add driver. When you do that, it becomes purple, and that means that a driver is now connected to it. And over here in our new graph editor window, you can see that we have a new driver here. Now it only says key, so I'm going to expand that out. And what we have here is a driver. It doesn't really say it, but it is. So how do we use this? Well, over here in the properties panel, which is the N key, I'll bring that back up and make it a little bit wider so we can see it again. This is where we set up the driver and how what bone we want to affect this value is going to work. So there's a few steps in here that you sort of have to just memorize and not really fully understand. I'm going to scroll down to the section called drivers. This is the only important section. The first thing I'm going to do, number 1, I have to change the type of driver from, and I'll make this window a little bit wider so we can see it. The first thing you have to do, number 1, is change the driver type from scripted expression to average value. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing you need to do is select what you would like to manipulate this value. In other words, we have to select the bone we want. So I'm going to click in Object Bone, and I'm going to select the armature. And now we have to specify an exact bone. So I'm going to type in face dash, and for this we're going to be using the brow bone, and I think it's called face dash brow. So I'm going to select that one. Now, sometimes in here, and it didn't happen for me this time, you might have to click this little update dependencies button if you get an error, and hopefully we see that in this or the next video. It's happened every other time except for right now for me. So I'm going to click update dependencies. Great. So what's next? Well, the third step is to click add modifier, because right now, yes, we have the right bone controlling this value, and you'll see it move a little bit. That's just a little bug in Blender. But we have to say how much we want to be able to move this bone, actually it's this one right here, to be able to affect this, because if you want to move it just a little bit to affect the entire value to make the eyebrows go all the way up, or do we want to have to move this bone a lot to make the eyebrows go up? Well, that's why we need to add a modifier. So the third step is click Add Modifier and select Generator. Once we do that, it's this value right here, this 1.000x. That's called the coefficient for polynomial. Now, I'm not an expert in math, but all I know is that that's the one that you have to change. And what I usually do is I change this to 5 in the direction that I want to move. Let's quickly take a look at this bone that we want to control the eyebrows. We have our local gizmo turned on, and that's a good thing. And the direction that we're going to move it to make the eyebrows go up is its y-axis on its local set of axes. So if I move that up on the y-axis, we want the shape key value to go up to 1 from 0. So I'm going to go ahead and select the mesh again, and we'll go back down to the driver. We want the y-axis, so I got to change the type from x location to y location, because it's the local axis, and we want to use local space. Okay? So we've gone ahead and changed the driver type from scripted expression to averaged value. We've specified the bone that we want to control this driver value. We've changed the type to the direction of the bone that we want to move. In this case, we're moving this bone positively. That means in the direction of the arrow on the y local axis. So if I go ahead and select y location and local space, next we have to specify a value. And what I usually do is type in 5, and that tends to give me something that I can at least work with. If you're moving on the negative y value, that means down, we would give a negative value right here. In other words, -5. So I think everything should be working here. If I select that bone and drag it up, you can see that it works. I'm controlling the value of the shape key with this bone. Now I'm going to go ahead and select that so you can take a look at these settings again. We changed the type of driver from scripted expression to average value. We specified a bone to control the driver with. We specified the direction of the bone that we want to move it in, and we specified local space. And we created a generator modifier, and this is the value that we can now change. Let's go ahead and go back to our front view. So I'll press 1 on my keyboard, and I'm going to grab that same bone, and I'll press Alt-G to move it back. What I want to do here is make this bone move at the same speed as our shape key. So if I move this up right now, I'm going to take a look at how far away the bottom of the bone is from the bottom of the eyebrow. Ideally, what I want is for the bone to move at the exact same speed. So if I move this up, you can see that, well, the distance here is getting larger. In other words, the shape key is transforming faster than the bone is moving. Let's go ahead and make this maxed out. So we reach the very 1 value of our shape key, and as you can see, that gap is a whole lot more. So the shape key is moving too fast. So what I'll do is I'll press Alt-G to clear out that location, and I'll select the mesh again, and I'm going to play with this value here. 5 is too fast, so I'll turn that down to 4, and I'll see what happens. I'll press G, and I'll press Y and Y twice, move it straight up on the local axes, and let me see how that's working. I'll drag it straight up, and it's still moving a little bit fast, so Alt-G, select the mesh, I'll turn that down to, let's say, 3, and I'll try again. This is sort of a guess and check process. You know what, that isn't perfect, but it's okay for now. Let's move on. The next thing I want to do is make the eye controller bone control those left and right shape keys on our mesh. So again, I'm going to select my mesh, and I'll go over here to brow.L and brow.R, and I'll go and do brow.L first. So I'll right click on its value, and I'll say add driver, and again we get another driver over here, so I'll select that one. Let's go through these steps one more time. I'll select the driver type and change it to averaged value. I'm going to select the bone we want to control that object. In this case, it's in the armature. It is the eye target, so I'll select that. I'm going to select on the eye target. Let's look at its local space. The direction that we're going for is the X positive value. It's the direction that this red arrow is going. So I'll select the mesh again. It's the X location on the local space. Let's go ahead. We have an error here. I'll click on Update Dependencies. And now I can add that modifier again. We're adding a generator modifier, and I'm going to again change it to 5. That's generally the number I go for right away. So let's go ahead and try that out. I'll grab that bone, move it to the right. Aha, it's working pretty well. Now we're going to adjust that 5 number to something else. So I'll grab the eye target and I'll move it over. Now what I'm looking for here is I'm going to find somewhere to look to see if this is staying the same. So this little vertice right here on the eye target, if I take a look at how far it moves away from the eyebrow, I think it's moving a little bit slow, or the shape is moving a little bit slow for the target. So I'll press Alt-G, select the mesh. I'm going to say 6. So we'll try that again. I'll grab the target, I'll move it to the right, and maybe 6.5 or 7. Okay, that's looking pretty good to me. Let's go and do the same thing for the left eyebrow. So what I'm going to actually do here is copy the driver from brow.L to brow.R. How do I do that? Is I right click on this value right here. I'm going to say copy driver. I'm going to click on this value. In fact, I'll select brow.R, right click, and paste driver. Now, it's not going to be exactly right. It's going to be using the wrong directions. So I'm going to select brow.R over here, and we have to change the X location local space is right. The bone is going to be the same, but it's going to be -7 instead of 7. Let's go ahead and test that out. I'll select the eye target, move it side to side, and our eyebrows are working. Let's go back to our mesh, brow.down. Let's go ahead and add a driver for that. I'll right click, add driver. We should be getting used to this by this point. Brow.down. I'm going to change the type to averaged value. We're going to change what bone we want. We're going to use the same brow bone, so face dot, what's the armature I have to select first? I'm going to select face dot brows, or face dash brows. We're going to be using the bone's Y location, its local Y location. So Y location of its local space. We're going to click this Update Dependencies button, and that solves that error. We're going to add the Modifier Generator, and we're going to change this value to -5 because we're moving it down negatively on that Y-axis. So let's go ahead and grab that bone, move it down. And by the way, if you don't get it to move right away, just double check that you're following these procedures as I've gone through a few times, and make sure that you've got everything right and that you've updated that dependency if you have an error. Let's go ahead and grab that bone. I'm going to move this down. I think the transform is happening a little bit slowly compared to my bone, so I'm going to select the mesh again, and I'm going to say -6. We'll try that again. And that's still happening quite slowly. I'm going to try a higher number, maybe -9. And that's looking pretty good to me, so I hope you're getting the process of this. Next, we're going to make shape keys, I believe, for the eyelids. So these eyelids each have separate bones, which means they're not going to work together. Yes, I could make a bone to move them both down at the same time, but in this case, I'm not. So I'm going to make each individual shape key separately. Let's go ahead and select the mesh. I'm going to press the plus button to make a new shape key. I'll double click on it to name it. I'm going to call it eyelid, and I'll use camel case eyelid.L. And in fact, I'll make an eyelid.R, and I'll select eyelid.L. Go into edit mode, and we're going to select that mesh. So what I'm going to do here actually is select the front of the face with the L key, and in fact if you get the whole head that's okay too. And I'm going to press H to hide it because again we don't need to see it, and in my case it actually leaves the border of the eyes as well because we have marked seams there. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and select the eyebrow. We are in the edit mode of this shape key, so I'll select the eyelid there, and we'll move it down. Okay, in this case, you know, if you want to make it curved as it's going down, you can do that. I'm not going to bother for this video. It looks pretty good to me. We'll go to the front view just to make sure it only goes down to where it should. That looks great. I'll press tab to go back into object mode, select eyelid.R, and do the same thing over here, A, L, and move this one straight down. Great. Let's go ahead and select our mesh, and we're going to add drivers. Now again, we can copy the driver from the left to the right, so we'll only set up the left one first. I'm going to right click on that value. I'll select the shape key first, add driver, select the driver. We have to change this to average value. We're going to select a target bone, so it's in the armature. It's going to be called eyelid or face-eyelid.l, it's going to be on that bone's negative y local axis. So I'm going to say y location, local space. We have to update dependencies. I'll click Add Modifier Generator and -5 in this slot right there. Let's go ahead and test it out. Aha, we've got a controller. Now again, it's going way too fast. As you can see, I'm not moving this all the way down. So I will change that value. I think it's going to be less than that, so -2. That's looking better, but let's go ahead and make that faster, -2.5. And it's happening just a little bit fast. So again, I'm going to be picky here. -2.25, sure. And a little bit slow, so -2.35. Perfect. All right, we have that one set up. I'm going to go ahead and select the mesh again. I'll go to eyelid.l, my shape key, right-click, copy driver, click on this one, right-click, paste driver. Now, the difference here is that we're using a different bone. So I'm going to select the new driver that just appeared on my screen now, and we're going to select a different bone. So it's the armature, but it's face-eyelid.r. I'll just type that in, and it's on the Y location. It's the same local space. It's the same -2.35. So we'll go ahead and try that out. I'll grab G and Y to make it move on the local axis, and that's working perfectly. Now, as you notice, I have all of my axes here. I have all the axes that I can move it, so I can move it forward, but there's no reason to do that, and that's actually a bad thing. So I'm going to go ahead and press the N key on my keyboard to bring up my transform panel, and I'll lock the axes for all of the bones that I don't need it to move in. Also, what I'm going to do is to stop the bones from going way off into outer space, I'm going to select each one of the bones in a time lapse and add a new constraint, a limit location constraint to each one of them so they don't go too far. Alright, the last thing I'm going to do in this video is add the shape keys on the drivers for this final bone to make the character look either angry or worried. I'm going to do that in fast forward because I think you've seen enough of me adding shape keys and drivers. Alright, so the upper half of our facial rig is almost complete. The only thing that's left to do is to add bone shapes, which I'll do between this video and the next video. So let's go ahead and check out what they do. I'm going to go ahead and grab both eyelid bones and drag them straight down. I've got limits on them so they both only move down as far as I need to go. I'll press Alt-G, I'll grab this one, I can move it up or move it down, and as you can see I can combine different shape keys. That might have been on your mind. Can you combine shape keys? Yes, they do blend together. I move the eyebrows all the way up. I can still move this one up and make him worried or make him angry with his eyebrows up. Likewise, I can also close both eyelids part way to give him the exact look that I want him to have. That'll be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.